What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. If you guys are new to the channel, do me a favor and hit that sub button, hit that notification bell, and make sure you're not missing any of the awesome content we have coming out. Now, it is time for some Marvel Comics, and we are going to be jumping into the brand new Extreme Carnage Alpha issue number 1. Coming out of the events from King in Black, we've learned a lot more about symbiotes that we didn't know before. And in the King in Black event, we saw Agent Anti-Venom come back from the dead. Now, if you didn't get the opportunity to check out the King in Black, go ahead and check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. I covered every single issue to include all of the tie-ins when it comes to the King in Black event. Now, this is written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, and the art is by Manuel Garcia. And with that being said, let's dive into this breakdown. Alright guys, so as we dive into this issue, we're picking up with Senator Peter Crane. Now, this senator, he's staking his entire platform on an anti-alien agenda. And what we're hearing is a speech from him. This speech saying that these monsters don't belong here, and that the longer they allow aliens to stay on Earth, the bigger threat is going to continue to happen. Now, he really does have a strong platform to play on here, because just in recent events, they've had the Empire event, and more recently, they had the King in Black, where everybody was attacked by symbiotes. And this most recent one, it plays so well for him, simply for the fact that it was an unbiased attack. The symbiotes attacked everyone. Man, woman, child, didn't matter their race or where they were living, it took over the entire world. It wasn't targeting just the Avengers or X-Men or anything specific of that manner. And so it goes without saying that right now people are absolutely terrified. People are scared of the next alien attack, especially if you live in New York City. Now, whilst he's giving this speech, we see a symbiote Carnage making its way through the ocean waters, making its way up the food chain, taking over one fish, working its way up to taking over a shark. And after taking over a shark, it makes its way to land, makes its way to Somalia, and ends up taking over a young gentleman who is sitting on the shoreline. And what we're seeing is Carnage simply making his way through the food chain, making his way up to controls of power, not knowing entirely what he has in store right now, what his plan, what his overall goal is going to be. But being Carnage, knowing everything we know about Carnage, we can only assume that is going to be something very sinister, and it's going to be something that Flash Thompson and no one else sees coming. But the senator, he continues his speech and he starts to bring it to an end, talking about an organization that he's brought together called Friends of Humanity, and that there's going to be protests at Washington, D.C., all in an effort to pass anti-alien legislation. And as the senator finishes up this speech, he has everybody up in a frenzy, everybody cheering. There's a lot of people that are supporting this. And as he makes his way back into his little staging area with all of his children as well as his staff, they're telling him right now that the projections are really good. People are tuning in, people are agreeing with it. But his son brings up the question, do we really want to isolate individuals like Thor and Hyperion? Do we really want to try to deport these individuals? And more or less, his father tells him that he needs to shut his mouth, to never bring up that kind of language again, because the platform that they are driving on is exactly that. It's about deporting individuals like Thor. But the senator knows that the only thing right now separating him from the presidency, from passing these anti-alien legislation laws, is one more alien killing spree. But this is when we're taken to a back alley, and we have Flash Thompson, newly reborn, helping out one of his buddies, Hank. And Hank, he's done a couple tours of duty. He's served in the military, and now being back home, he's helping at this shelter. It's definitely going to helping veterans. His wife is happy that he's back home, but right now, this is really difficult for him. The transition is really hard for a lot of guys, and this is something that I understand on a very personal level, having served myself, being an infantryman myself. It's really hard living that kind of lifestyle, going to war, living that experience, and then coming home and trying to have a normal life, trying to be like everybody else. And Hank goes on, he lets us know that the army, it wasn't really for him. It wasn't really his thing, but it was the intensity, the adrenaline, After doing everything that they've done, it's really hard to find real meaning in life after that. And I really enjoy that it's tackling things like this, because it's really hitting some deep issues that are within the veteran community. You know, I personally myself, I've served 4 years. I wasn't a huge fan of being in the Army, but there is that camaraderie that you miss, that sense of purpose that you're given, the almost godlike complex you feel when you feel like the baddest mother effer on the battlefield. And so Hank's really feeling, while this work is fulfilling, it's not really craving that niche he needs. And he's thinking about doing some kind of private security work, which is a route many veterans do take. Private security is a huge open door for these guys. But in the midst of this conversation, this is when Flash experiences something. He doesn't really understand what happens, but he feels a type of pull on him. And when he opens his eyes, he is sitting in a car. It is nighttime and there is blood strewed everywhere. And looking over, he sees Carnage. And at first Flash, he doesn't realize this, but Carnage lets him know that they're family, that they are cousins. And of course, many of us are questioning, like, how is this even possible? How is Carnage around if Cletus is dead? But we can only assume that it's in the same manner that Flash Thompson is also alive. Because if we're gonna want to get technical, there are 2 dead men sitting in that car right now. And this is where we see full Carnage come out, and Anti-Venom as well. And it looks like these 2 are about to duel, but really Carnage, he's brought him here to taunt him, to tell him to follow that pull that he is feeling, to find the rest of his family. Because Carnage, he has plans to change the entire world. And as Flash goes to lay the smackdown on Carnage, we hear Hank screaming, calling out Flash's name. Flash coming to, realizing that he's in full Anti-Venom suit and he's about to beat the crap out of Hank. And he freaks, he panics. You know, this is obviously something he didn't mean to do. Somehow this telepathic connection that he has with Carnage because of the relationship of being quote unquote family. And he didn't realize what he was actually doing. And so, apologizing to Hank, he runs off down the alleyway. And as he's making his way down this alley, this is where he gets intercepted by the one and only Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. Now, obviously, Flash and Iron Man, they've never had the best relationship. But Iron Man has been trying to track down Flash because Iron Man believes they can help one another. Because as it stands, they both have a very serious issue headed in their direction. And that's when we get a glimpse of what Carnage is kind of doing in the background. And it looks like he's making his way up the political totem pole. Currently in the body of a doctor, he is trying to get a meeting with Peter Crane, our senator with the anti-alien agenda. But Peter Crane ends up sending his little lackeys instead. And because of this, they all just get murdered. Carnage destroys every single one of them in the most brutal ways possible. And so we're starting to see a little bit of Carnage's plan start to come to fruition. What better way to take down the government, to take down the world, than by starting one of the world's superpowers? By taking over an individual who's already got a platform of getting rid of people like Thor. That would be in Carnage's best interest at the end of the day. But then we pick up with a lab of Tony Stark's. And while Tony, you know, he's super intelligent, this lab itself, it kind of recreates itself for whatever crisis they're having to face that day. But right now he's dealing with something that's kind of out of his realm of expertise. And that has to do with symbiotes. Because in the King of Black event, we saw him kind of bond with a symbiote, creating an Iron Man symbiote armor. And so after the events, he bonded the symbiote with Extremis. And he calls this little experiment Extrembiate. Pretty much a symbiote fused with the technology. Something that Tony Stark can control. And right off the bat, Flash tries to tell him, like, this is not something you can control. You may have temporarily control over this thing, but in the long run, you're gonna end up losing control of this. Now, Tony, he's not 100% sure of that, because people like Flash, people like Eddie, they're all able to control their symbiotes. And of course, it's not as simple as that. There's that bond there. There's a connection that is fused. It's something that has to be worked together with. But that's really not the reason he brought him here. While he would love some help on this specific project, Iron Man has been tracking something else. He's been tracking the moves of Carnage. Though up to this point, he doesn't know that it is Carnage. He is following a symbiote who's been laying waste all up and down the world. Because after the events of the King in Black, he decided to track down every symbiote that he could find. Because not all of them are connected to the hive that Eddie Brock is in control of. Not all the symbiotes are out there doing good things now. Because that's what we've seen. With Eddie Brock taking over as the King in Black, we've seen the symbiotes become more or less a Green Lantern Corps. Individuals out there among the stars on infinite number of planets, helping as many people as possible. And as Flash is looking over everything that Iron Man has uncovered, he immediately knows that this is Carnage. Now everybody thinks, Cletus is dead. How can this be Carnage if Cletus has died? And Flash lets him know that it's not as simple as that. It doesn't work if you're dead or not. His consciousness is still alive with inside the hive. And when a host and symbiote have such a strong bond, there can be an imprint left behind. And there's never, ever been a stronger bond than Carnage and Cletus. And the other reason that he is confident it is Carnage is because of his little vision he had. Whatever that pull was that brought him to wherever Carnage was, this all just reaffirms that that wasn't just a vision, that it was something more. And Iron Man, he kind of has an idea of what Carnage might be planning. Because as it stands, after the Null invasion, everything has changed. Usually when the Avengers and everybody go against some world-ending event, it's something that's not really seen. It's not really affecting everybody. But the Null invasion was much different, because it attacked everything and everybody. From dogs to cats to children to babies, there was no mercy. There was not a single soul that was spared. And as it stands, the world is scared to death. And something that they cannot deal with right now is another alien attack, especially an alien symbiote attack. And nobody is banging that drum harder than Peter Crane, the Senator. And so they believe that Carnage is going to be going after this Senator. And so what Iron Man is asking is Flash Thompson kind of go undercover, go to this event, and try to make sure that nothing happens to this Senator. Make sure that Carnage can't get to him. And with his connection to Carnage, being able to feel that pull, it should lead him to the right direction. Because if something were to happen to Peter Crane, he would be a martyr to the cause. And there would be no stopping this anti-alien legislation. And the Friends of Humanity, they would be the new normal around here. And that's where we pick up with a press conference. And we have the Senator up at his podium giving his speech. And as he's doing his typical propaganda speech, we see Flash out in the crowd. Now, right now, he's looking around for anybody that might be controlled or under the influence of the symbiote. And as he continues to look around, this is when he hears the voice of Carnage. Because Carnage, he knew that Flash would show up. They have been waiting for Flash to show up. And he lets Flash Thompson know that Carnage has brought everybody together. All of their brothers and sisters, pretty much every symbiote Venom has ever spawned is all around him right now, because Carnage has created a hive of his own. And we see Anti-Venom bust out, and he is trying to make his escape. He is completely outnumbered. He has been ambushed. There is no way that he is going to be able to make it out of this. And even if he were to fight this, it's going to look bad in the public eye. And as we see Anti-Venom form around him, there is an immediate panic because it's a symbiote. Everybody right now is scared of symbiotes regardless of what they look like. And he tries to tell Tony Stark that I'm making my way out of here. But Tony is worried that Carnage might go after the Senator. Little do they know, and Agent Venom now assuming that the Senator has been taken over by Carnage. Carnage is the Senator, and this is exactly what he wanted. Wanted to lure Flash Thompson here, so he would bring out Anti-Venom and cause a huge commotion, only furthering the policies, but also flexing that they now have a hive of their own. Something that stands outside of Eddie Brock's control. And then we're taken to later that evening, and we have a meetup with Hank and Flash. Now, Hank is his army buddy that was looking for some kind of security work, some kind of security detail work. And right now, Flash Thompson, he needs a man on the inside. And as it stands, the Senator's security detail, they are hiring right now. And so he offers Hank a job, apologizing for everything that happened, but saying that there's some serious stuff going down and he needs somebody to have his back, somebody that he can trust. And Hank, without question, tells him that he's in. 100% he's in. Whatever he's got to do, he's got his back. Alright guys, so we're jumping into Extreme Carnage Part 2. And right now, Andy, she's telling us about how Alchemax is really just a place of the worst imaginable nightmares. Not only is this place dangerous, but it is also a very evil place. A place where they create monsters. The only issue is when you create things that are living nightmares, they tend to find a way to escape. They find a way to get out. And this is where we see Doppelganger making his escape from this skyscraper of a building. And as Doppelganger is making its run, this is where we see the guardsmen, and we see them come descending on top of Doppelganger. But no matter how strong their suits are, they are not equipped to take someone on as powerful as Doppelganger. And this is where we see the arrival of Scream. Now, Scream right now is looking for Demogoblin, and who else helped track down Demogoblin than someone like Doppelganger. But at the end of the day, Scream is not going to get much information out of Doppelganger. Doppelganger is all brawn and no brains. And we see a fight break out between the two of them. Now, fighting things like Doppelganger, this is nothing new for Scream. This is nothing new for Andy. They together have faced way worse things, especially with the King in Black, Absolute Carnage, everything that they've been through up to this point. But the guardsmen are something new. Not necessarily an epic level threat, but they are new because they haven't seen them before. Because the guardsmen are a direct response to the King in Black event. After the world was almost taken over by symbiotes, the guardsmen really popped up out of nowhere. They were formed relatively quickly, and their job is to find and detain any symbiotes that they find. And so Scream, after easily taking down Doppelganger and stringing him up, she turns on the guardsmen because they really want to know, like, why are you hunting us? I've done nothing up to this point to provoke you to attack us. And the guardsman, he tries to act tough. He tries to hold out and not give much information. But the information he does give is just letting us know that they are told to report back anytime they see any kind of extraterrestrial or symbiote activity. But as Scream is trying to get all of this information out of the guardsmen, this is when our Senator pops up on the TV. Now, in Extreme Carnage issue number 1, we saw the Senator. The Senator currently is Carnage. And in this interview, in this speech that was televised, Carnage is reaching out to all the family. Everybody that is connected to Carnage. Everybody that is connected to Venom. Because right now, Carnage is trying to get the band back together more or less. Calling all the symbiotes that are connected to him. And this is where things really start to go sideways. Because Scream cannot resist the call. Cannot resist the call to go to Carnage to join the family. And Andy is doing her best to try to stop Scream. To try to have Scream get control, to not let Carnage inside. But right now, they're dazed, they're confused, have a huge migraine, they are completely disoriented, and they end up falling into traffic. Almost getting hit by a car, they think it's best to try to drop down into the sewer. Thinking that this may be a good opportunity, a good spot to stay safe and try to gather their thoughts and figure out exactly what is going on. Because up to this point, they don't know that Senator Crane is Carnage. They just hear the calling. Now, as they fall down into the sewer, Andy is trying to tell Scream to resist, to fight the urge to follow the voice. But then Scream goes silent, doesn't say another word. And from the darkness, this is where we see Carnage. And this was Carnage's plan the entire time. Because now Carnage has them trapped inside of Andy's head. But not just Andy's mind, but part of the hive mind. And Carnage lets us know, when the King in Black was dethroned, there was a void left open. And right now Eddie Brock believes that he is in complete control of the hive mind. But Carnage, some way, somehow, has some kind of control. He was here before anybody else. He understands the hive mind better than anybody else would. And while everybody believed Carnage to be dead, Carnage was slowly just building up in the shadows. And with Andy currently locked up, this is when Carnage starts to talk to Scream, trying to convince Scream to join him, saying that he needs his sister, that he needs Scream and all the symbiotes need to join together. And up to this point, Scream has been hiding. But after this conversation, this is where we see Scream come out. And out on the surface right now, Scream is hurting people. Scream is killing these guardsmen and having no remorse about it whatsoever. But it's not Scream that is currently in control. Carnage is the one at the wheel right now. And it is absolutely brutal. These guardmen are getting just ripped apart. And inside the shadows, Andy is doing her best to try to convince Scream to fight back. Trying to convince Scream that they are family. That Andy and Scream, they are one. If Scream were to join Carnage, it would go against Andy. But right now, Scream is just so confused. With this constant pull from Carnage on her, Andy feels like she has no other option. And this is where we see her activate her Hellfire. Because you gotta remember, Andy has the mark, the Hell mark. Meaning that she could possibly end up being a Hell Lord later on down the line. But Hellfire is extremely potent against symbiotes. And with Scream currently killing people on the outside, Andy feels like she has no other option and activates her powers, using these powers breaking through the symbiote. But this is exactly what Carnage wanted. Carnage wanted Andy to use these powers because this gave him the leverage to convince Scream that Andy wants nothing more than to hurt them in the end. That Andy is not true family and that Carnage is the family that Scream belongs with. And with Scream currently feeling utterly betrayed, still feeling the burn of the Hellfire, Scream decides to separate. And with the symbiote coming off her body, Andy is left there. Carnage and Scream both gone. And only small remnants left over of the symbiote. And as she is sitting here, she's sitting here crying, pleading, begging for Scream to come back. This is when one of the guardsmen show up and Andy just blasts the crap out of him. Because right now she is completely broken. This was like having a part of her completely removed. And so she sits there on her knees, tears coming down her face, and the guardsmen surrounding her. Alright gang, so as we dive into issue number 3, we are picking up weeks ago. And we're picking up with an individual by the name of Buck Cashman. And Phage is currently taking the form of the K9 that is accompanying him. And he's doing this because he wanted a simple life. After everything that has happened, what he has going on now is the most simplistic but easiest life. After lab experiments, after being security guard, army lieutenant, a younger brother, not to mention everything that Carnage had put him through. He just wanted something simple, and so he became a hunter. And as these two close out their day after they're finished with their hunt and they're sitting back at the house, Buck Cashman is sitting in his chair and they're listening to the Senator Crane on the TV. And Senator Crane, as we know, is Carnage. He makes his call out to everybody. He makes his call out to the family. And this is where we see Phage turns on Buck Cashman and rips him to pieces. When Carnage put that call out, Phage was unable to do anything, only being able to hear Carnage's voice trying to drown it out in some way, shape, or form. And Phage is really confused on why he wasn't able to control himself. But the nitty gritty of it is that Carnage is the alpha, the apex of the Codex. And so Carnage tells his brother to simply follow his lead. And they're gonna lay down some carnage. And that's what will pick us up in present day. Because Andy Bitton, she just had Scream burned off of her, using her hell mark to do this. But she was given no other choice, because Scream could not resist the call of her brother. But when Andy burned her off, when she burned Scream off of her, there is still some remnants left over. And as it stands, all the guardsmen around her, they want to take this in, because it's their job to be able to take on all the symbiotes. They're trying to clean it all up, and even if it is just a small amount of symbiotes, it is their duty to take care of this. And so all the guardsmen, they surround her and they take down Andy. Shocking her, she wakes up in some kind of cage. And of course, right now, she is livid. But when she wakes up, this is when she's met by Dr. Steven. Now, Dr. Steven, he tries to tell Andy that he is on her side, that he cares about symbiotes, he cares about her symbiote, and he is doing everything he can to try to save Scream. And Dr. Steven, he came just to say that, just to tell Andy that there was a little bit left of Scream. Though it wasn't much, he's doing everything in his power to be able to make Scream alive again. And while they're having this conversation, on the outside, this is where we see the arrival of Buck Cashman, aka Phage, claiming to be the private security detail for Senator Crane. He has come here on special orders because Senator Crane has a special interest in Andy Benton, and making his way over to Andy, taking out the guards in the process, that he came here for revenge. He came here for some payback. Because of what Andy did to Scream, Carnage and Phage are going to make her pay. Because what Andy did doing that attack, it stopped Scream from joining the rest of the family. And for her betrayal, he is going to take her life. Now this is when the system starts going off, letting us know that there is a symbiote inside of the building. And this is where we have the arrival of Anti-Venom, making his entrance, letting Dr. Steven know that it is not him that the system is going off for. And he tells the doctor that there's no time to talk about if he's alive or how he came back or any of that, saying that Andy is in danger and he needs to get to her right away. But all Flash has to do is follow the screams, because right now, Phage and Andy are going head to head. They're going toe to toe, using her Hellmark to the best of her ability. Now, it doesn't affect him in the same manner, but he is still feeling these punches. But as the fight continues on, it looks like Phage gets the upper hand. And with him about to kill Andy, this is when Anti-Venom jumps in. With him jumping in, Phage throws Andy across the room, focuses his attention on Anti-Venom, and gives him a slash across the chest, giving Phage enough time to make his way over to Andy. And making his way to Andy, he impales her right in her stomach, driving his hands right through her. It appears that Andy Benton has died. Alright gang, so we are picking up exactly where the last issue left us. We are picking up with Phage impaling Andy, because this is Andy's punishment for burning her symbiote, for burning Scream alive. Carnage sent Phage after her, and Anti-Venom, he was too late. Flash Thompson could not make it in time, but with Andy sitting here impaled, we see a giant blast of hellfire go out. And as she drops to the ground, blood is pouring out of her mouth. She may be alive, but it is only going to be for a short amount of time. She is not going to make it very long with bleeding out in the amount she is. And this is where Flash jumps into action, blasting away at Phage. But this isn't just a fight between Anti-Venom and Phage, because the guardsmen are still around. The guardsmen were more or less created after the King in Black event. These guys are meant to hunt down any symbiote and take them out. But these guardsmen learn very quickly that Phage is not somebody to mess with, because we see Phage completely decapitate one of these guardsmen like it is freaking butter. Now, this is the part in the story where we pick up with Lasher. Lasher making his way into what appears to be a nursing home or some kind of rehabilitation home for elderly. Lasher making their way in, taking over this old man, hearing the call from Carnage on the television. Carnage speaking through the Senator Crane. And with Lasher hearing this call, we have to wonder what Lasher is going to do. Is Lasher going to make their way to DC, or are they going to disobey now that they finally have some true freedom? And that's what's going to take us back to our fight, with Phage completely ripping apart these guardsmen and Anti-Venom doing his best to try to take on Phage, simultaneously taking on guardsmen as well. But Anti-Venom is able to make his way over to Andy, getting to her and seeing what critical condition she is truly in. He realizes he's got to get her out of here, because as it stands, she only has a matter of minutes. She is losing so much blood, so he picks her up and they run. And while Flash is running as fast as he can to try to save Andy's life, simultaneously we are seeing Lasher work their way through this nursing home, killing, maiming, destroying everything in their path, all while also having a conversation with Carnage. Carnage tapping in and trying to convince them that they need to come to DC. They need to come join their family. But this isn't what Lasher wants. Now having freedom, Lasher wants freedom from Carnage and all of the other symbiotes to do as they please and to do as they want. And with Lasher completely refusing any offer from Carnage, this is when Carnage taps into the host, has a conversation with the host, and convinces the host to come to DC. That if the host comes to DC, the host will be reunited with his family. And Lasher trying to plead with the host, trying to let the host know that Carnage is lying and that there is nothing at the end of this road for him outside of death. Because at this point, the individual has already died. The host is dead at this point. And Lasher is the only thing keeping this man alive, keeping his brain functioning. But the host does not listen, and we see the host making its way through the courtyard, killing everybody in its path, on a straight path to DC. And picking back up with Flash, he's made it into the lab where Scream, or the remnants of Scream, is being kept. And this is really a last-ditch effort. There is nothing that could really save her at this point. Nothing outside of Scream and what is left of Scream. The only thing about that is there was so little left. This Scream was fused with some anti-venom. But Andy, not caring, not even listening to this conversation, she goes over and she breaks open Scream. And we see Scream and her become one again. But this is no longer Scream. This is the opposite of Scream. This is Silence. The birth of a new symbiote has arose, and now we are seeing her as Silence. And personally, I have to say, I think this is an absolutely awesome direction to go with Scream. Having a mix of anti-venom in there, it really does help with the being a vigilante, with being the anti-hero. Because now Andy and Silence, they have complete control over themselves. They're not adherent to anybody, not to Carnage, not to Venom, a symbiote that is finally truly free. And we're about to see just how powerful Silence is. And that's what's going to take us to Staten Island. And we pick up with Bryn. Bryn going through the TV, flipping through all of the channels, not really finding anything, but then sees on the news everything that is going on currently with Anti-Venom, Phage, and Silence. Seeing all of this transpire, we see the symbiote toxin arise, and they make their way out the door. And so now they're gonna be jumping into the fight. And heading back over to the fight, we pick up with Silence, and we are seeing exactly what she is capable of. Going toe to toe with Phage. And we see Silence knock Phage around like he is absolutely nothing. Throwing him into a wall and then throwing him outside of this building. He goes falling from the top floors. And as he falls, he collapses into the ground. His host appearing to be done with, to be kaput. And with a stray dog standing nearby, we see the symbiote start to grab onto this dog. And so for at least the time being, Phage has been put down. Silence came in and wreaked havoc like it was absolutely nothing. And that's what's going to bring us to DC. We have a bunch of security guards standing at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial, waiting for someone's arrival. And coming over the shoulder of Lincoln, this is where we see Lasher making their way to DC. Now here, the host is able to be released. Now that Carnage has them exactly where he wants them, the host can be released and Lasher can now join the rest of the family. And then we see Silence standing in the window where she just threw out her brother. And Anti-Venom Flash Thompson has to ask the question, is that still Andy in there, or have they become something different? Alright gang, as we jump into part 5, as we jump into Riot, we are picking up in Washington DC. And in DC, we have Senator Crane. Now he has been working very actively meeting with very rich and powerful individuals, working very actively with friends of humanity. No one really knows what Senator Crane is up to or what he has been doing, but luckily Flash has somebody on the inside, that individual being Hank, the military veteran that he met earlier on, one of his friends. And Flash asked him to keep an eye on the senator to see if anything really seems out of the normal. And after much observation, he's noticed a lot of things, to include him rarely ever blinking, even not breathing at times, for an unusual amount of time. And so Hank knows there's something off with this guy. He knows that there is something wrong here. He just can't put his finger on it. But things are about to change for Hank, because he is about to go pick up somebody that Senator Crane says is the MVP they have been waiting for. But that's when we're taken to New York City, and we pick up with Flash and Andy. And with all of these guardsmen being taken down, Flash has to ask the question, is that still Andy in there? With this new symbiote on her, completely untested, not knowing what it would do, the concern is she is somehow changed in a very negative way. But we see Silence unmasked, and Andy is underneath, completely normal, completely unharmed. And we see the two embrace, Flash Thompson being extremely happy that she is still alive, that she's not impaled, and putting that symbiote on didn't affect her in any kind of negative way. Because at the end of the day, this is a brand new kind of symbiote, completely untested, but not wasting any time, not wanting to wait around for anybody new to show up. They get out of there. They get out of there and they head out and get something to eat. And they come up with some kind of plan on what they're gonna do next. And after seeing what Silence can do, after seeing what Silence had done to Phage, and that was severing the connection to the Hive, that's the really unique aspect of Silence. Because symbiotes, they can't survive on their own. They have to be attached to some kind of hive. And so the idea here is, if she can somehow get into the void and connect herself to Carnage, she may be able to disconnect him from the hive, to be able to isolate him, and from there take the fight directly to him. Now, of course, this is something that terrifies her, taking on Carnage by herself inside of the void. It seems like almost a suicide mission, no matter what her abilities as Silence are. And while these two are discussing this plan, this is where we pick up on a bus. A bus where a man is sitting in the back and he has a symbiote attached to him. That symbiote being Riot. And Carnage has dropped in to say hello. Carnage has come to drop the invitation, to invite Riot to join the rest of the family in whatever he has going on whatever his overall scheme or plan is. And of course, Riot, he's not going to turn this down. He's not going to turn down Carnage, and we see him start wreaking havoc on this bus, cutting and slashing his way through every single person until he finds a suitable human, a suitable host to be able to make his way to Washington, D.C. One that will be strong enough to do everything that he's going to need to do. And while this is happening, we have Silence trying to tap into the void, trying to reach out to Carnage. We see her reach out into the void, but there is an issue. Going into the void, there is nothing but darkness. She is all alone and there is nobody else around. For some reason, she cannot connect to the hive. And this probably has to do with the anti-venom mixing in with the symbiote and creating Silence. But she's not giving up. She continues to try. She continues to try to reach out to them. But where they should be, where they normally are, she can find only darkness. And she floats out in this void completely alone, with nothing else around her, no symbiotes, just complete and utter silence. And with Riot finding his suitable host, he makes his way off of the bus. Now, I think this host is just going to be temporary, and it really seems like Hank is lined up to be taken over, because Hank is the one to meet him here. This is the MVP that Carnage was talking about. Everybody's been waiting on Riot. We can only imagine what Carnage has in store now that Riot has joined the game. And Hank has landed directly in the crossfire. And as it stands, Andy can barely walk, trying to get into the void, trying to find the rest of the symbiotes, trying to find any of the symbiotes. It left her completely drained, with her nose bleeding, with her barely able to stand, and Flash carrying her down the street. This is when she feels something. This is when she feels somebody. And tapping into the void, she sees it. She sees the person that she was feeling. And as she gets closer, as this individual gets closer to them, we find out that it is Toxin. Alright gang, so as we dive into part 6, as we dive into Toxin, we are picking up with Bryn Waters. He is the new host of Toxin. And there's a lot going on in the world right now. A lot that he has to be worried about. With this Friends of Humanity, with Senator Crane pushing his agenda against aliens, against symbiotes, it's very dangerous for them. Not only that, but his dad is working at Alchemax. And he shares a rather strong opinion on having that human beings should come first, their species over any other. Of course, not knowing that his son now has a symbiote, that him and Toxin are bonded together. But right now, Bryn is hauling butt, making his way to Alchemax, because he saw on the news that it was under attack. Knowing that his father works here, he hurries there, trying to get there as fast as he possibly can, asking Toxin for some kind of help. That if Toxin were to take over, they could swing their way there. But as Bryn is pedaling, as he is trying to get there, Toxin is not communicating with him. And that is because Toxin is currently inside of the void. Currently inside of his little personal void. Just like all of his brothers and sisters before him, we are seeing Carnage trying to tap in, trying to have a conversation and lure him to Washington, D.C. to get him to join the rest of the family. And this entire conversation, it's really Carnage just beating him down. With Eddie Brock so focused on the entire universe, he's not worried about Toxin, he is not worried about Carnage, and that is how Carnage is able to get away with all of this. But Toxin isn't here for any small talk. Toxin wants to know exactly what Carnage is doing here and what he wants. And Carnage tells him that he's here to forgive his son. But at this point, he keeps dying. He keeps dying and embarrassing him. And it's really Carnage just beating him down, verbally abusing the crap out of him, telling him he is worthless, telling him that he is a stain, telling him that he is a disgrace to all other symbiotes, that he was supposed to be a prince. And Carnage tells him that he is going to join regardless. He is going to have him by his side. He is going to be able to keep an eye on him, keep him in line. Alive or lobotomized, it does not matter to him. And as this fight continues on, this is where we see Carnage grab a hold of Toxin, telling him that he is worthless, telling him that he is nothing without Carnage. We see Carnage swing his arm, and in an instant, we see Toxin decapitated and holding his head in his hand, telling him that he is the 1000th of the line and that he should have been a prince, but he never expected anything from him. No matter who he attaches himself to, no matter the host, he is always and will always be a loser. But Carnage offers him one last chance and tells him that if he is to eat Bryn, ditch his host and make his way to Washington, D.C., that everything will be forgiven and they will rejoice as a family together. Now, with Toxin hearing enough of what he's had to say, this being his void, this is where we see Toxin transform, his neck opening up, and we see it swallow Carnage slowly. And as Carnage is slowly being eaten, he tells him that this is not over, that this will not last long, the kid will eventually die, and he will come crawling back, saying that there is no way he is ever going to be able to defeat him. But with Toxin beating him inside of the void, this gives him a little bit of courage, a little bit of hope of being able to defeat Carnage on the outside. Because Toxin will never join Carnage, no matter what. After how cruel and mean and vindictive Carnage has been, over all of this time, finding a friend inside of Bryn Waters. There is no way he will ever turn away from that. And while all of this is going on, we see Bryn making his way to his father, getting to Alchemax in the aftermath of everything that has happened. And his father is injured, on a gurney in a neck brace, wondering what the heck his son is doing here. Now this whole time, Bryn's been a little concerned that his father may be one of these guardsmen, maybe one of the individuals that specialize in hunting down symbiotes. Now his father tries to reassure him that he's nothing more than just a guard, but they can't be sure at this point. They have no idea exactly what his father does. And with Toxin getting done with Carnage, he starts listening in on all of this conversation. But right now, Toxin, he's still staying inside the void. More than anything, he's in complete shock that he was able to defeat Carnage even if it was in his own void. And basking in Carnage's defeat, sitting in the void, thinking he is now king of the castle, it appears that somebody else is reaching out. Seeing a glimmer of white light out there, believes someone new is coming to invade his space. He goes to investigate who this is. And seeing this individual, he goes back to talk to Bryn, letting Bryn know that there is somebody that might be able to help them get revenge on Carnage and everything he did. Because Carnage is the reason that Alchemax was attacked. Carnage is the reason that his father is now being hospitalized. So both Toxin and Bryn Waters now both combined have a reason to go after Carnage. But to do this, they are going to need some kind of help. And that help is going to come in the form of Silence and Anti-Venom. As they search around this void, not finding anything, this is where Toxin drops in. And Toxin is ready to fight. Him and Bryn both are ready to have some revenge. And finding these two inside of the void was just the individuals they needed to be able to team up with and enact this revenge. And with them ready to bring everything they have, they head off to face against Carnage. Alright guys, so as we dive into part number 7, we are picking up during the King in Black event, with symbiotes falling from the sky, with them completely taking over the city. We see Gemma Shin. And this is the day that changed everything for her. This was the day that she became Agony. But picking up in present day, she is currently working for Senator Crane, working with Friends of Humanity, the anti-alien movement. She is currently the communications director. And this makes sense. We've seen Carnage bring everybody into his circle, giving everybody a job with Senator Crane. And whatever they're planning, it's about to go down. Within the next couple of days, whatever Senator Crane and Carnage have really thought up, this plan is about to be executed, and that's what's going to take us to the National Mall, picking up with Anti-Venom, Toxin, and Silence. As they walk around the streets, they see this anti-alien movement being pushed with extreme pressure. You see signs literally everywhere, people handing out pamphlets. This is getting shoved down the neck of every single citizen that lives inside of the city. And with Bryn being a kid, he really doesn't understand how people can fall for this kind of rhetoric, how they can fall for the idea of being so hateful. But the issue is when human beings are pushed to the brink, when they are absolutely petrified, when it is something that they don't understand, historically, they have always been the first to strike out. Maybe it can be boiled down to basic human nature, the nature and need for survival. But while they're having this discussion, we see Gemma run by them, completely unaware of one another. Gemma is on a mission right now. And as the sun begins to set, as the park begins to get dark, this is when two individuals come up to her, doing some catcalling, appearing to be very hostile individuals. But they don't know what she has up her sleeve. Because her coming and running out here, this was all part of the plan. She was hoping to run into somebody. She was hoping to find a victim. And without wasting a single breath, she jumps in at them, spitting some poison acid that just straight up is melting their faces off. She slices, she dices, she tears these guys to pieces. Now, with Agony having her appetite filled, this is where we're gonna pick up at Flash's place. Currently sitting down with everybody and Hank, his buddy from back home, his buddy from the war days, the one that he has on the inside keeping an eye on Senator Crane, tracking all of his comings and goings. And he's been deemed relatively unimportant in the big scheme of things. Senator Crane, nobody else is even recognizing that he is there. So standing in the background, he's able to eavesdrop on a lot of conversations. More specifically, he knows exactly what Senator Crane has planned, because the president is going to be giving a speech. And this is going to be dedicating a memorial to all of the people that were killed during the symbiote invasion. Now, Senator Crane, he has his own anti-alien speech that he wants to give. He wants to do this and air it at the same exact time the president is giving his speech. A kind of way to undermine the president. Dirty, tricky politics. But that is just part of the plan, because they believe that Carnage and Senator Crane have every intention of trying to assassinate the president in broad daylight. And if Carnage were able to succeed in this, if he were able to assassinate the president, the entire country would be thrown into absolute chaos. Now, up to this point, Hank really didn't know anything about this. He didn't know that Senator Crane was a symbiote. He didn't even know that Flash is a symbiote. Or has a symbiote, I should say. Now, of course, Flash just didn't want to get him involved any more than they absolutely had to. Though that bit of information, it may have been important as you're literally observing the guy, spying on the guy. But while he's trying to really grasp all this information, they have Andy attempt to try to find somebody out there. With Andy having a bridge to Carnage, she might be able to reach out. Her only concern is that it may be two-way. Carnage may be able to spy and see exactly what she is seeing as well. But she wants to take that chance. She wants to find out if she can reach out and see where Carnage is. That would give them the element of surprise, the opportunity to be able to take them down with the element of surprise. Now, picking up with Agony, she is currently putting on display all of the body parts that she has maimed, that she has taken from her victims, displaying them throughout her house like freaking collectibles. And this is where we see the arrival of the one and only Carnage. Now, Carnage, he's coming up and letting her know that it's time for a sit down, now that the majority of the symbiotes have been gathered up. Now, throughout this issue, they really do refer to Carnage and all of his symbiotes as the Life Foundation symbiotes. And it's really just an easy way of saying all of the symbiotes that are under Carnage's control. But he lets them know that it is time for a family meeting. And with the room turning into a bar, with us currently inside of the hive, and everyone is wondering, where is Toxin? Where is Silence? Now, Carnage, he isn't worried. He knows that they're gonna show up, especially with what he has planned tomorrow. There is no way they are gonna be able to stay away. Now, while he's saying this, Andy is trying to eavesdrop. She's trying to get closer and closer because she spotted them inside of the hive. But as she gets closer, Carnage knows she is there. Calling out to her, she absolutely panics, she freaks out. And coming out of it, she tells Flash that he knows. Carnage knows that they are there. Carnage knows that they are coming for him. And so without wasting any time, we see them symbiote up and they jump out the window. Losing the element of surprise, they have to attack and they have to do it now. And that's what's going to take us to the next day. With our three symbiotes currently overlooking the president's speech, they're looking for any of Carnage's Life Foundation symbiotes. And as the president does his speech, they can't see anybody. And as it nears its end, Senator Crane prepares to do his speech. As he is getting ready to walk on stage, Hank makes a phone call, trying to see what is going on, seeing if they found anything yet. And with them looking around with no assassination attempt actually happening yet, it makes Flash reconsider what is going on. And this is when he realizes they had it wrong. Because Senator Crane, Carnage is not after the president at all, saying that they had it all wrong. Crane isn't actually the host of Carnage. The goal is to kill the senator, telling Hank that he needs to get out of there. He needs to leave, and he needs to leave right now. This is where we see Carnage put a blade right through him, because Senator Crane wasn't actually Carnage. It was Arthur Crane, the senator's son, and with Hank currently bleeding out all over the ground. Alright gang, so as we dive into this finale issue, we are picking up exactly where the last one left us, with old man Senator Crane giving his speech. And as this speech starts to begin, we have Flash, we have Toxin, and we have Silence all making their way across town, trying to get there, trying to intervene before it is too late. Now they have an inside man, and that inside man is Hank. But the issue is, Carnage took him the freak out. And Anti-Venom, they lost communication, because right now he is laying on the ground and he is bleeding out. And this is when Riot picks up the phone. He picks up the phone and he taunts them, saying that Carnage has played all of them like chumps, saying that they knew from the very beginning that Hank was working with them, that this was all part of his plan. And as he's sitting here saying all of this, he doesn't realize that Hank, he gets up, and we see in one fell swoop, Riot's head come completely off, because Sleeper just freaking decapitated him. Because this entire time, Sleeper has been laying dormant inside of Hank. This is how Hank is able to walk from his injuries. And this is the backup that Flash sent him with, knowing that this was a possibility, knowing that there could be something bad that happens to Hank. There had to be something, some way of protecting him. And so with Riot currently being down, being out of the fight, they have to hurry and get their butts over to the facility before all of this kicks off. And as the senator continues to give his speech, we see some people slowly locking all of the doors, turning this place into a giant open air prison. And as he sits there and smiles at the cameras, talking about Friends of Humanity and all of the other anti-alien movement he is trying to push, his smile disappears almost instantaneously. And that is because he just got freaking impaled. As he looks down at his hands, as he finds them completely covered in blood, we see Carnage completely burst this guy open, with the senator bursting into tiny little pieces, blood and guts being sprayed in every direction, and this all being caught on national television. And this is where we see the symbiotes attack. Lasher, Riot, Phage, Agony all start creating chaos, start dicing people up, murdering people left and freaking right. Because at the end of the day, the team did not make it in time. Carnage was able to do exactly what he wanted to do, and that was to cause panic. And as people are getting sliced up, doing everything they can to try to flee, this is when they finally show up. We see Anti-Venom, Toxin, and Silence. They all come descending down and taking on all the other symbiotes. And of course, Anti-Venom, he goes directly for Carnage. And he has to ask the question, why didn't you take over the senator? Why the senator's son? Now Carnage, he had every intention of taking the old man over, that the son was simply a stepping stone to getting to the father. But when he got inside of Arthur Crane's head, he found something that he absolutely freaking loved, because he's been playing everybody his entire life. Starting in his adolescence, he started with animals, and then he tried it on the homeless, even a few classmates and girlfriends over the years. And we're talking about murdering people, because this guy is a certified psychopath. And so once he got a hold of Arthur, he realized that he absolutely loved it, reminding him of Cletus. He absolutely could not help himself. And seeing Arthur Crane's real prospects for taking over his father, for killing his father and taking his place, he figured he might as well stay with the son and continue on doing that, letting Anti-Venom know that they have failed. Everything that he wanted to do today, he has made come to fruition. The dominoes have been set. He has knocked them over, and they are falling over one by one. And in the midst of their fighting, this is where we see Iron Man. And he comes in with his symbiote armor. And with Iron Man making his entrance, he blasts the crap out of Carnage, hitting him so hard the symbiote comes off of Arthur. And with Carnage detaching from Arthur Crane, Iron Man thinks he's gotten the upper hand. But this is when his suit starts to go haywire. And Carnage lets him know that really he's a complete idiot, thinking that you can wear symbiote as armor, that you can merge it with your technology, and then you can just control it. And that's simply not the case. And as Carnage wraps him up, he slowly starts to take the suit off of Iron Man. We see Anti-Venom blast Carnage in the back. But at this point, it is already too late. The suit, its extremis, has already been taken off of his body. And we are seeing Carnage start to merge with it. And with Carnage and the suit now combined, we see him grow freaking wings. He grabs Agony and they fly out of there, saying that it does not matter what they do. It does not matter if he is even defeated this day. The whole world has seen what has happened here, and that they are going to simply eat themselves out of fear, saying that the next time they see them, it is going to be a completely different world. And as they make their escape, we have the rest of the symbiotes that were in his hive. They are getting captured by Alchemist guardmen, with dozens and dozens of them coming flying out of the sky. We see them start taking down symbiotes. And of course, Arthur Crane, he's sitting there saying that he didn't do any of those things, that it was simply the alien lying about everything. And so with this fight being done, we pick up later on that evening. And as they recap on everything that has transpired, they're really concerned that this is just too much for Bryn. Him being a teenager, they don't think that this is the best course of action to be exposing him to this kind of danger. Because at the end of the day, they could have lost everything. Bryn could have been dead. Anti-Venom could have been dead. Every one of them could have been taken out. And Bryn, he kind of sees this as a win, but at the end of the day, that's not the case. Because they just lost severely. Tons and tons of people were just massacred. And while Dr. Steven, he currently has Lasher, Riot, and Phage all contained, they all know that that is only going to be temporary. That symbiotes always find a way to escape. And when they do escape, they are going to have one hell of a time on their hands. But they also realize that Bryn is already into the mix. They've already brought him into this, and it's already too late for him. And so while he is going to be joining along with them, they let him know that this isn't a game. This is real freaking life right now. People are sleeping with guns under their pillows. People are absolutely terrified right now of anything that looks like an alien, anything that looks like a symbiote. They see that as the enemy. And to go even further, Carnage has now bonded himself to Iron Man's freaking suit. The symbiote suit that he created during the King in Black event. And so as it stands, we have no idea what he's going to be capable of, what he's going to be able to do. The ramifications of this are going to be huge. But this is when we pick up with now Senator Arthur Crane. With the death of his father, he has taken up his spot. He started running and he was elected. And it doesn't take long for Agony to come and make sure that their little lapdog is going to follow some orders. And the only thing that Arthur cares about is trying to get Carnage back. Trying to be connected to that symbiote just one more time. And so for this to be possible, he will do anything that Carnage wants. He is now at their beck and freaking call. And that will be the end of this issue. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. You know, obviously, this is not the end of Extreme Carnage. It may be the end of this limited series arc, but this is definitely not the last of him. Now, this is going to be picking up in Venom issue number 1, where Eddie Brock's son is now Venom, is now one with Venom. With Eddie Brock too busy keeping track of his entire hive, Venom thought it was best, not only Venom, but also Eddie, that he has a protector. And who better than the one individual that has kept Eddie Brock alive for all of these years. Now at this ending, I am not completely surprised. Of course, Carnage is going to be able to get away. The fact that he merged with Iron Man, with his suit that he created, with that Extremis. We can only imagine the ramifications that are going to be transpiring from that. They're going to come trickling out. Who knows how much more powerful that's going to make Carnage. Now we see the small connection, the bonding that happened to Scream in creating Silence, making her apparently a more powerful symbiote. And so this merger with Carnage, we can only assume, is going to be absolute devastation. But all in all, I think it's a great way to just bring back some symbiotes, introduce some new ones, and set up a whole new era of symbiote comics. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you have not yet, do me a favor, hit that sub button, hit that notification bell, make sure you're not missing any of the awesome content we have coming out, and until the next breakdown.